Hi again. I want to talk to you today about the last generation. We are the last generation. And I'm going to give all the verses that prove this absolutely and without a doubt that we are the last generation that is alive right now on the earth. Let's look at Matthew 24, 27 to 31. It says, "For as lightning that comes out from the east and is visible even in the west, so will be the coming of the Son of Man." Now, remember, Revelation 1 told us every eye will see him. This is talking about the rapture. Wherever there's a carcass, there the vultures will gather. Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. So this is very clearly the rapture. There's no doubt about this, that this is talking about the rapture. And you notice what it says happens. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man, in verse 30, will appear in the sky, and the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. Of course, that's what Revelation 1 tells us. Jesus said, every eye will see him. He's coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him. In verse 29, notice it says, immediately after the distress of those days, in other words, the time up to the rapture, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. So this is talking about the rapture. And we can see this in Revelation chapter 6. In Revelation chapter 6, starting in verse 12, it says, I watched as he opened the sixth seal. There was a great earthquake. The sun turned black like sackcloth made of goat hair. The whole moon turned blood red, and the stars in the sky fell to the earth as late figs drop from a fig tree when shaken by a strong wind. The sky receded like a scroll rolling up, and every mountain and island was removed from its place. And of course, then the kings of the earth, the princes, the generals, the rich, the mighty men, everyone hid in the caves of the rocks of the mountains, and they called to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. For the great day of the wrath has come, and who can stand? Because the rapture starts into motion the events that bring about the day of the Lord. And these people think the day of the Lord is going to happen right then. And of course, it's not going to. There's 3.5 years after this happens that the day of the Lord happens. But the rapture, we can see right here, Jesus is talking about the rapture when he mentioned all these things happening. Let's go back to Matthew 24. In Matthew 24, we can see right there in verse 29, immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. That's exactly what Revelation 6 told us would happen. So, and this is talking about the rapture. At that time, verse 30, at that time, the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will mourn. They will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. He will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. So there's no doubt this is the rapture. So let's keep reading now with Matthew chapter 24. Let's just keep right on going. The next verse, verse 32. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. No one knows about that day or hour, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. So once again, it's very clear that no one knows the day or the hour. Jesus didn't know, and the angels of heaven didn't know because the Father didn't tell them. and therefore the church doesn't know. And I've given messages on this before. We can see that when the fig tree, the twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know the summer is near, and that generation will certainly not pass away until all these things come to pass. So with that in mind, let's look at Mark chapter 11. Mark 11, starting at verse 12. The next day, as they were leaving Bethany, Jesus was hungry. Seeing in the distance a fig tree in leaf, he went to find out if it had any fruit. When he reached it, he found nothing but leaves, because it was not the season for figs. Then he said to the tree, "May no one ever eat fruit from you again." And his disciples heard him say it. Then later on in verse 20, it says, in the morning as they went along, they saw the fig tree withered from the roots. Peter remembered and said to Jesus, "Rabbi, the fig tree you cursed has withered." Now, in order to get a proper idea of what really happened here, we need to look at what a fig tree's characteristics are. And that is described very well to us by W.M. Christie of the Church of Scotland. And he gives us a little write-up on this, the Barren Fig Tree. The facts connected with the fig tree are these. Toward the end of March, the leaves begin to appear, and in about a week, the foliage coating is complete. Coincident with this, and sometimes even before, there appears quite a crop of small knobs, not the real figs, but a kind of early forerunner. They grow to the size of green almonds, in which condition they are eaten by peasants and others when hungry. When they come to their own indefinite maturity, they drop off. These precursors to the real fig are called taksh in Palestinian Arabic. Their appearance is before the fully formed figs, about 6 weeks later. So as Mark says, the time for figs had not yet come. But if the leaves appear without any taksh, that is a sign there will be no figs. Since Jesus found nothing but leaves without any taksh, he knew that it was an absolutely hopeless, fruitless fig tree. Jeremiah 24, 1-8. After Jehoiakim, son of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, and the officials, the craftsmen, and the artisans of Judah were carried in exile from Jerusalem to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the Lord showed me 2 baskets of figs placed in front of the temple of the Lord. One basket had very good figs, like those that ripen early. The other basket had very poor figs, so bad they could not be eaten. Then the Lord asked me, "What do you see, Jeremiah?" "Figs," I answered. "The good ones are very good, but the poor ones are so bad that they cannot be eaten." Then the word of the Lord came to me. "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Like these good figs, I regard as good the exiles from Judah, whom I sent away from this place to the land of the Babylonians. My eyes will watch over them for their good, and I will bring them back to this land. I will build them up and not tear them down. I will plant them and not uproot them. I will give them a heart to know me, that I am the Lord. They will be my people, and I will be their God, for they will return to me with all their heart. But like the poor figs, which are so bad they cannot be eaten, says the Lord, so will I deal with Zedekiah, king of Judah, his officials, and the survivors from Jerusalem, whether they remain in this land or live in Egypt." So there were 2 groups of Israelites. There were the ones that were still in Babylon and were still in captivity. Then there were the ones who had returned to Jerusalem. But all of these people, both the good and the bad, were all figs. You notice that? The good figs and the bad figs were all Israelites. So the figs are Israelites. I mean, the fig tree is Israel. The fig tree is very obviously Israel here. And it even talks about them coming back into the land, bringing them back to this land. I will build them up and not tear them down. I will plant them and not uproot them. And Ezekiel 26, 24 to 26. For I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back into your own land. I will sprinkle clean water on you, and you will be clean. I will cleanse you from all your impurities, from all your idols. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. This is a very clear pointer to the Christian rebirth, to the new birth, giving you a new heart, removing the heart of stone and giving you a heart of flesh. Any man be in Christ, he's a new creation. The old is gone, the new has come. That's 2 Corinthians 5:17. So we know that this is a reference to the salvation of Jews here in Ezekiel 36, and that they will be brought back into the land, and salvation will come to them. And if you've ever seen my videos about the two witnesses, you know that the two witnesses are Israel and Judah. Judah and Israel are the two witnesses. And they are marked right after the rapture. In Revelation 6, we just read about the rapture. Revelation 7, the Jews are marked and their 3.5-year ministry begins because they get saved. Romans chapter 11. Verse 25, I do not want you to be ignorant of this mystery, brothers, so that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. When will they have a hardening in part? Up until the Gentiles come in, the full number of the Gentiles. When does the full number of Gentiles come in? The full numbers come in when the rapture happens. When the rapture happens, the Christians, all those who get saved, who are born again, they all go up in the rapture, and the Jews start their 3.5-year ministry. Verse 26, and so all Israel will be saved, as it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn godlessness away from Jacob, and this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. This sounds exactly like what both Ezekiel and Jeremiah said would happen to Israel, doesn't it? And it happens after they come back into the land. So all Israel, verse 26, all Israel will be saved. For it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn godlessness away from Jacob. And he will take away their sins. They will get saved, in other words. They will be born again. They will receive those new spirits. The heart of stone will be done away with, and they will receive a heart of flesh, the new birth. They will become born again. Verse 28, as far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies on your account. But as far as election is concerned, they are loved on account of the patriarchs, for God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. Verse 28 points out, as far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies on your account. At the time of this writing, the Jews were the enemies of the Christians because the Jews did not believe, the Pharisees and the leaders of the Jews, they did not believe that Jesus was the Messiah. And the Christians in the early church were persecuted for believing that Jesus was the Messiah. So at the time, verse 28, as far as the gospel is concerned, when this was written, when the book of Romans was written, as far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies on your account. But as far as election is concerned, they are loved on account of the patriarchs, for God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. It's talking about Israel, the Jews. Verse 30, just as you who were at one time disobedient to God have now received mercy as a result of their disobedience, the Jews' disobedience, so they too have now become disobedient in order that they too may now receive mercy as a result of God's mercy to you. So the result of the rapture is after the rapture happens in Revelation 6, we see Revelation 7. Revelation 7, right after chapter 6 when the rapture happens. Revelation 7, after Jesus appears, every Jew sees their Messiah in heaven. They see him. Every eye sees Jesus at the rapture. Every eye sees him. It tells us that in Matthew 24. It tells us that again in Revelation 6. It says they all see the Lamb, and they're all saying, hide us from him, from the face of the Lamb. So Revelation 7, starting at verse 1. After this, I saw 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds of the earth to prevent any wind from blowing on the land or the sea or on any tree. Then I saw another angel coming up from the east, having a seal of the living God, the seal of the living God. He called out in a loud voice to the 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea. do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Verse 4, then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 from all the tribes of Israel. It's just so clear here that it's Israel that is the two witnesses. This is when Israel gets saved. Israel gets saved after the rapture. If the full number of Gentiles come in Revelation 6, the Gentiles are gone, and the Jews start their 3.5-year ministry right after that in Revelation chapter 7. All this happens at the sixth seal. All of this is the sixth seal. The seventh seal has not happened. This all happens at the sixth seal. And right after this, of course, in Revelation 7, we see the churches in heaven, because it shows us that people from every tribe, nation, and people are all before God's throne. And the angel tells John that these are those who have come out of the Great Tribulation. In other words, they were raptured out of it, and they're saying salvation belongs to our God. The tribulation, remember, is not a 7-year period. There is no 7-year tribulation. The tribulation is the time before the rapture. Jesus just told us that. In Matthew 24, Jesus tells us that in verse 29, immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky. This happens at Revelation chapter 6. And this is after the trouble of those days, after the tribulation. The tribulation is a time before the rapture. It's not a 7-year period. There is no 7-year tribulation. It's the time of trouble before the rapture. So with all this in mind, let's go back to where we started, Matthew 24, 32 through 36. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know the summer is near. We know the fig tree is Israel. The figs, both the good ones and the bad ones in Jeremiah, were all Jews. They were all Israelites. They were Israelites. The fig tree is Israel. So when it says, now learn this lesson from the fig tree, it's talking about Israel. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know the summer is near. Now the summer is when the figs come out, but when the leaves come out and then the touch starts appearing, that's when you know that the summer is near. And the leaves came out when Israel became a nation in 1948, because then the touch started appearing also. The Jews who got saved, there have been Jews getting saved, and they're the early fruits. They're the early fruits that are before the salvation of Israel happens, of all Israel. Salvation of all Israel happens after the rapture, when all the Gentiles, the full number of the Gentiles, go up and they're with the Lord. During the time before the summer, between the time of 1948 when Israel became a nation and the time of the rapture, that's the time where the Tosh appears. It's when the leaves come out, and the Tosh is the Jews who get saved and go up in the rapture before the rapture happens. And then, of course, when the rapture happens, all Israel is saved, and then they start their 3.5-year ministry. That's the 144,000, the two witnesses. If you want clarification on that, please watch my video called The Two Witnesses of Revelation. So it's very clear here, we're the last generation. It says, I tell you the truth in verse 34, I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away till all these things have happened. So what is it telling us here? It says that now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know the summer is near. Okay, that's Israel becoming a nation. And we know that the summer is near. That's the time of harvest for Israel, which happens at the rapture. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. You know the rapture is near, right at the door, because that's the summer. You know the summer is near. So even so, when you see all these things, you know that the summer is near, right at the door. The summer happens when the rapture happens, because that's when all Israel is saved, and that's when the figs the figs come in, the ripe figs. And then verse 36, no one knows that day or hour, not even the angels of heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. So the day and the hour we do not know, but we are in the season and we are the last generation. We're in the season of the rapture and we're in the last generation. There's no doubt about it. The Bible tells us this very plainly. We just saw the Bible tell us this. It is just very plain we are in the last generation. The generation of Israel, having its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, becoming a nation again, that generation will not pass away. That means all the people will not die. From 1948, and when Israel became a nation, those people are not going to all be dead when this happens, when all these things happen. So that's my message for today. Thanks for watching.